I don't know why everybody's not showing up on my screen, but I'll go ahead and get started. Um, there we go. Well, good morning. Hi, guys. Hope everybody's doing well. Uh, Today, I did update the website for our agenda. It's going to be pretty much focused on two things. The positive COVID cases that I know that Blaze had a few, and just wanted to make sure that people knew that we had some updates to our Smart Start plan in case you needed for some guidance on if, or actually I should say when, that does happen to you. There were some tournaments that happened this last weekend, so I just wanted to give those directors an opportunity to give a little bit of feedback on how that went and what they're expecting for their upcoming tournaments. And then just a little bit of updates on the Girls Recruit Wisconsin tournament, July 20th through the 22nd. So just a little bit about Blaze. I lost my screen. Sorry about that. So a little bit about Blaze. I am actually at home because I had to quarantine. I guess I didn't have to because according to the law, they're all suggestions on what we should do. But a few weeks ago, actually, after our first week, we have a couple stories. After our first week of starting, one of our boys basketball coaches had sent us an email and a text letting us know that we had a practice on a Tuesday, then a practice on a Thursday, and then Thursday evening, he played some pickup basketball for, excuse me, like 1 or 2 hours in the park by his house. And on Friday, had heard that one of the guys came down with symptoms. He's going to get tested. So right away, we asked the coach to stay home. Because he actually, I want to say the very next day, he came down with a little bit of symptoms. So he said, okay, if you have symptoms, you should stay home for 10 days, according to, we've been following the CDC regulations because we found that the hospitals and our local health departments are not in agreement on how to handle things. They're telling our families different things. So we pretty much are following the policies of the CDC. And so then he found out, I want to say on Monday, that that person who he came into contact with had tested positive. And because of that, he was moved from that 10 days to a 14 days of quarantining at home. So pretty much he missed like a week and a half of practice because it all flows back to date of exposure. And so just to be safe, to make sure that he didn't come up with symptoms and that he wasn't interacting with the athletes, we asked him to follow those guidelines. After a day or two of symptoms, real mild symptoms, he felt fine and followed policy, kept working from home. And we had an assistant coach take over and then another parent step in and just help for that boys team. None of the other, because it actually was interesting, he didn't get exposed to the person who was positive until after his last practice with our kids. So there was no concern for exposure to those athletes because he did isolate after seeing our athletes. He did go get tested, and it was interesting because the test came back abnormal. It didn't come back negative, didn't come back positive. We couldn't find anything in regards to what abnormal meant. So we were pretty stumped on that, really didn't get any direction, but felt that since he had symptoms, we just wanted to play it safe. So, because we didn't, of course, want a quick spread. Then I want to say, then the late second week of practice, we had a couple girls on my 12s team who it was June 4th, and this is, I say the dates because everything is quite interesting. Thursday, June 4th, our entire team practiced. So everybody had contact with the two coaches and the athletes. And that next day, Friday, two of the girls plus another friend from the community had a sleepover. And then on Friday night, and then that Saturday on the 6th, one of the girls started coming down with some major symptoms, fever, not feeling really well. And then she ended up getting tested Monday, decided, hey, since I have symptoms, and we actually told the one gal, okay, you have symptoms, please stay home 10 days until your symptoms subside for at least 72 hours from that 10-day period, coming back from that 10-day period. That Tuesday, when she found out she was positive, the second gal from the team started feeling symptoms. She too went and got tested and found out she was positive. But the third girl that they had from their neighborhood that slept over hasn't felt anything. And though the one gentleman who was 70 years old, who picked them up, it's a neighbor friend, picked the girls up from one house to bring them to another. He came down with symptoms, but we're not sure if it's because of the girls or someplace else. But it was very odd because nobody else in their families, immediate families, have felt symptoms. And nobody else from our team has come down with symptoms. But once we found out, we noted, once we found out they had symptoms, we asked them to stay home. We notified the families, we notified the venue director, we notified families, venue director, and our coaches. And then when we found out that they had tested positive, we had to let everybody know that there was now a completely different policy to follow. And we notified the families, the venue director, and our coaches and our staff, to let them know in general what was going on without saying team, without saying names, because you need to keep everybody's personal information, what's happening with them, confidential. So we pretty much had to quarantine our gals for 14 days. Now, when the gals tested positive, the health department, of course, gets involved, and they do ask the patient who's tested positive, who did you come in contact with, and when was the last day of contact. And so even though we were making calls and sending emails to the team, having them follow the policies, the health department also started making calls to all the families to let them know of the exposure. And they actually followed the same protocol of quarantine for 14 days since exposure. So June 4th, there was an exposure. We thought that we would start counting from June 4th and that the girls would be able to start practice again on the 18th. And then, sent that email out, came to find out, for whatever reason, they don't start counting on June 4th. They start counting on June 5th. So there's some question there, because as people were asking the health department, well, Blaze said 18th, you're saying the 19th. And we're like, hey, we got to get one practice in before we go to JAG on Sunday, especially if everybody's feeling fine. So it's interesting because some of the parents, they were hearing from different health departments, and I don't know if it's because of the communities they lived in, and they didn't all get the same phone call at the same time or from the same people. So there are different health departments, different people, which was interesting because I would think they would treat it as a case so that that health department person would understand and know what's going on, but that's not how they did it. And so it was interesting. All of our families were getting a few different feedback. The ladies who were calling from the health department were saying, please follow the policies. This is what you should do. We're going to send you emails to take, give us feedback on what your temperature and your symptoms are every day. And the one gal I talked to, I explained the situation, and she said, oh, it's fine, go back on the 18th, as long as people are feeling fine. The guys who were calling that were from the health department pretty much said, okay, these are policies, but we want you to know these are just recommendations. You really don't have to follow them. So it was pretty interesting to go through that. Today is my last day of quarantine, which I've been outside working out, but in the house, I didn't follow the strict guidelines where I'm supposed to completely stay away from family. I still think that we had it in January. And in that, I got a little tizzy, because I'm like, if every time there's an athlete that I've interacted with and find out that they're positive with the organization we're running and the people I come in contact with, I'm like, I can't stay in my house every single time like you guys. It would be crazy if you had to quarantine and lock yourself up for 14 days every time that happened. So I started looking into getting an antibody test, because then I can say, hey, I don't have to stay home just in case, because I know I've had it. I'm not going to get sick, and even if I do, it's mild and I'm good. So I found out that UW-Madison has an antibody test. I haven't called to make an appointment. I was trying to find something around here. The hospital system that we have insurance for with Theta Care said that they're not doing antibody tests, and our best source for that would be the local blood community center. So I called the local blood community center. They sent me to their homepage on that had a link to convalescent testing. They want more people who have had it, like tested positive for COVID, to come donate blood, so they can help others and provide those antibodies to others. So they do the antibody testing with that process. I clicked on the link. You have to fill out a form and submit it. And with that submission, they say that it's going to take a couple of weeks for us to get back to you. It's going to take a couple of weeks for the test to get scheduled, and it'll take a few days for you to find out if you have antibodies or not, and then we'll take your blood. Still too long. So I had found out that there was another company in the Appleton area called Optimal Health who does antibody testing. Called them and they said, yes, we were doing it, but we're not doing it any longer because we're moving on with the rest of our business. So we're not providing that service anymore. So community blood center would be your best choice, and UW-Madison, unless your hospital does it. I have not called around to other hospitals to see, like AMC and Affinity and things like that. So for the most part, our families have been fine. Actually, everybody's been cool. They're like, we'll stay home, no biggie. We ended up running for our 12 girls team. We ran a Zoom practice yesterday. My wonderful assistant came up with a body workout that she had the girls do for fitness, but also for ball handling and things like that. And then we went through our offenses on paper, had the girls pick names for them. And that was the first time we were introducing their set out of bounds plays and things like that. Just so they had they saw it before their next practice tomorrow, which is we actually added some practices in on Friday and Saturday. So that way they felt more confident going into Sunday's just a game tournament. Yeah, and all the families have been fine. Nobody else has felt sick, come down with symptoms. The girls who did have tested positive for COVID, one of them felt a little feverish one day, but her loss of taste and smell actually is still there. The first girl who tested positive, she actually, she was doing fine after a couple days, but then her fever just doesn't seem to want to go away. So she kind of spikes fever a little bit, is a little sluggish, and mom said she's sleeping a lot. Nothing, extreme of concern where she needs to go to the hospital, but they're treating it like a typical flu, giving her lots of fluids, vitamins, things like that. So, does anybody, any questions?
Lisa, so that person you just described, is that the person who showed the most ill effects of everybody involved in your whole saga there?
Yeah, I call her, she's our first COVID.
Zero or something?
Yeah. Yeah. Zero. Yeah. Yes. Yeah, she was the first one to show symptoms and kind of has it a little bit worse. She has she got nauseous. She too lost her taste of sense of taste and smell. Uh yeah, I could not imagine that because I love to eat. So um but the second gal who didn't have symptoms as bad or as long, and but still has the loss of taste and smell. They do have the daughter staying in her room for. The mom actually joked. She's like, she's unhappy that she has to stay in her room, but she normally is always in her room. But now that we told her she has to, she's not happy. But they actually have a sibling who has Down syndrome, and so they just want to take extra precaution. So when the daughter does come out of her room, for right now, since she still has symptoms, she is wearing a mask in the house. But like the mom had said, the dad, the one or two other siblings have not, or none of the siblings have exuded any symptoms. So going through it, I think the toughest thing that I realize is, holy moly, like there's just a lot to, one, you want to make sure, what is your policy, whether it's going to be based on CDC or anything. Have a response. That's my biggest suggestion, is have a planned response, and communicate with confidentiality, of course. And the more you can communicate, the better. And what I didn't realize is how much work all that is for like one incident. Then we had two, and then the second one went from one level to another, and all of the emails to make sure that we're letting, like we're at the Community First Center, so we had to let Adam Lagoki know, because those kids, go through the door. He has staff that open up the door. They do wash their hands, but and they're all wearing masks right now at the Champion Center for the staff, because which I think for right now is a good idea, because they see so many people coming through for practices, even though they have it controlled, where they're not letting the next team in until the first team leaves the building. So they pretty much have it down pat, and give time in between, but all their staff is wearing masks. So yeah. Any questions on that? Anybody else have any instances where somebody has said they're not feeling well and they're going to stay home? No, we're just the lucky ones. It was just so that we can update the Smart Start plan. I know that's what it was. So yeah. And then, okay. So I'll move on. The next topic at hand was going to be tournaments. And I was hoping that Jag was going to be here at least. Does anybody know if Jag had a tournament last weekend, or if they're starting it this weekend?
I think this weekend is the first weekend.
The first? Okay.
Yeah, because I just pulled up too, just to see if they've even had the schedule out yet.
No, I know they don't. I'm like, ugh, my parents keep asking me. Are you going to it, Cara?
Yeah, we should have 3 teams there.
Okay, yeah, we have all our girls teams going and some of our boys, and the schedule hasn't been released yet. So, but Scott Witt did have a tournament this past weekend at Center Court. Scott, do you want to let us know how that went?
Yeah, it went fine. I don't think it really could have gone any better. We had 47 games played. So it's a 5-court facility. So we had, I guess, 8 time slots, and we were, running 5 games at a time, with the exception of maybe on the first or last slot of the day, we had an empty court or two. So, I mean, no, I don't have any negative, really anything to report. We didn't turn anybody away. I think we temperature checked something like 600 people. You know, probably for the most part, what the people who are attending are people who obviously have a certain level of comfort with kind of the virus, and I mean, they're letting the kids play basketball, so they're not on the freaked out end of the spectrum to begin with. And the fact that we only let one fan per player, you're probably getting the healthiest, I'm guessing, person in the family too. So anyway, that was all good news. We haven't had anybody contact us with telling us, you know, like, oh my God, I tested positive today or something, which of course would be a nightmare scenario for the tournament manager. I We're contemplating allowing 2 fans per player in our next event. I guess I'm just trying to look at this from a common sense perspective. Have you really increased the risk when you bring mom and dad as opposed to just mom? I mean, you're bringing another individual that's already in close contact with a player that's out there and another attendee. So I don't know. The additional risk is probably borne more by that additional person that's coming than it is that that additional person is bringing a higher risk of infection to others. So, I mean, we would still do the temperature scan. We did not charge admission on the first event, but I mean, I'm generous, but I'm not that generous. So we've got to charge something on this other event because we can't we can't go, you know, triple in the hole like we went on the first event. So everything's just coming in on the high side. You know, insurance, we paid the refs definitely on the high end. Just, I mean, they haven't been working, and it's, you know, perceived as a higher risk situation. We had to have a lot more workers. We had 6 workers checking people in at the beginning. So that was a little bit more. I feel like there's something else. Oh, and we had a trainer on site, and you know, everything's just on the high end of the pay scale, it seems like, and understandably so. I think that's. Oh, we did this electronic waiver setup. My wife handled all that, and that went really well. But she put in a ton of time um, ahead of time and had a list of people that she was then checking off. And sometimes parents would do this thing like, dad's going to watch game 1 and then I'm going to go to the car and mom's going to watch game 2. And she just tracked like how many people were in the building on behalf of each student. And we had maybe 5 to 10 families that were kind of doing strange things like that. If we went to 2 fans per player, I'm inclined to think that some of that extra stuff might fall by the wayside. Of course, now they'll probably do it to get, you know, grandma or grandpa in or a kid or something. So yeah, I think all things considered, it went as well as it possibly could have gone.
Awesome. Yeah, Mary from One on One had said that they were there, and she said it was so nice. She said there was probably only 5 people with masks on in the facility, and it just seemed like people were just happy to be there, except for one director we won't name because they were
Oh, I don't even know who that is.
causing trouble at a game.
Oh,
Yes,
geez.
but I'm sure you handled it, Scott, right?
There's always something unexpected. So yeah, with respect to the masks, that was interesting. I'd say there were probably 20 to 25 people maybe that we saw at one point or another have a mask, but I would say almost all of them did not continue to wear the mask. And I don't know if that's like a peer pressure sort of thing, and in some cases it was coaches. I think maybe, and I think even Mary has some coaches that were wearing masks initially, like some young, you know, healthy people. And I think maybe Mary or others felt like that was like the coaches should be wearing masks. And then like when nobody in the facility was wearing masks, then later in the day, some of those coaches. So anyway, my point is, I'd say there were only probably 5 people that I can think of that wore masks the entire time that they were in there, which, you know, kind of gives you an idea of the mindset in Waukesha County right now.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. And we can share that with people who aren't in that area or Milwaukee, and continue to remind them that people are getting back to normal and things are not getting out of hand.
Yeah, and that could make people more nervous, I guess, at times. But I mean, I want to be upfront with people. Like, if you're coming to our event thinking that every single person there is wearing a mask, that's not the reality of the situation.
Okay. And that is good to know.
Also,
And
with officials, I think it's worth noting
Mm.
it was business as usual. We did not have a hard time getting a cruise at all, and I didn't notice any special, like, nobody was using the handheld whistles. I don't know if you guys have heard of that. Like, they were,
Yeah.
instead of the blowing into a whistle, there was some concern that you're you know uh, there's spittle or whatever, associated with the whistle. So there was a mad rush to develop or further develop or market more these handheld whistles that kind of simulate the sound of blowing a whistle through your mouth. Anyway, nobody had those. Everybody just had the traditional mouth whistle. So
Yeah, I've seen those hand whistles more in volleyball. I don't know why. Um, it's odd because I kept thinking, how are they blowing the whistle? He's not even putting up to his mouth, and they were just pushing a button. So um, I'm sure they've been probably sold out if there was a big push for that. Or, okay, I do not have a cough. I'm just telling you that right now. I just need water. But Scott, is there anything you would recommend for people who are going to be running tournaments? I know we have the couple in July, Recruit Wisconsin and then Hardwood Hustle, that you would just anything that you went through that you would say, hey, you really want to consider this?
I mean, I guess some of this is personal opinion too. So I mean, and I don't want to tell anybody else how to run their business or anything, but I tend to fall in the camp that the people that you most have to worry about are people who have high susceptibility, that if they got it, it would be really bad. And my hope is that through communication and just common sense, those people don't come to the event. And then the other thing that is particularly concerning to me are people that are symptomatic.
Mm.
And so I have a strong personal preference for events that actively take temperature scans. I know people say that's not perfect, but at least it's something.
So you do like the idea of taking those temperature scans?
I do, and we were pretty aggressive. I mean, we had signs posted, and we said, look, if in the last, and I don't have it right in front of me, but I think in the last 10 days or 14 days, whatever it was, if you have tested positive for COVID or had close contact with somebody that tested positive, don't enter the premises. If in the last 72 hours you've had flu-like symptoms or taken fever-reducing medicine or any of those things that would be consistent with maybe you have COVID, then you shouldn't be here. Now, a sign on the door, and we communicated that in advance too, and a sign on the door doesn't guarantee anything, but at least it kind of sets the tone. And we had our check-in actually outside the building, and every attendee, center court workers, our workers, I did it, my wife did it, we all did the temperature scan. And then the way, because we weren't taking admission, we just put a mark on people's hands. We'll probably do wristbands, I think, at our next event if we're also taking admission. And then we've got 3 different days. We'll probably have 3 different color wristbands, and we'll have to do the check-in process every day. So anyway, my point in all that is there are other events that I'm aware of, and I'll just give you an example because I'm sure some of you are doing them, but USJN, when I asked them, and they've been running events and they're very organized, and I have a lot of respect for what they do as well. But what they do is they just ask the director to basically sign a piece of paper that says, I checked everybody's temperature and we're all good. And I mean, if anybody thinks that every director is checking the temperature of every attendee, I don't know. You're even more naive than I am, I think. So I have a hard time believing that when you leave it in the hands of a director who, I mean, what's the least favorite part of all of our jobs? It's all of that administrative stuff, right? And now you're putting that in the hands of one of your coaches. And I just, to me, that doesn't really do anything. So if you want to really proactively keep sick people out of the building, I think the minimum threshold for me is an active temperature scan. And it's a pain, but yeah, a little portable forehead thing. It took probably 3 seconds on average to get somebody's temperature. And we had 2 of them. I don't think they're that expensive. We actually used what center court had available. I will say in USJN's defense that they said that they would make temperature scanners available upon request. So if a director did show up down there, didn't have a temperature scanner, they could go, ask USJN to provide them one. So that's maybe the only thing. I guess the other thing you want to think through is your waiver policy. And we went back and forth on this, and I think we're gonna have to change the wording on our next event. We just had a 1-day event, so we could basically say to people, you're attesting that in the last 72 hours, these different things didn't happen. Well, what do you do when our event is Fridays? Let's say our event is Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Some teams don't play at all until Sunday, but we're going to be collecting those waivers on Wednesday, Thursday, several days before. You'll just want to make sure that the wording is such that not only does what they're attesting to, not only does it apply to them at the time that they signed it, but they're essentially also guaranteeing that between now and the time that I'm going to enter the building, these things, didn't happen. So that just the whole legal stuff. I mean, who knows if that stuff is even really any protection, but I mean, we felt compelled under the circumstances to do something. And honestly, I think the fact that you do something, I think puts people's mind at ease. It's a little bit of political theater maybe, but hey, they're doing waivers, they're doing temperature scans. I will just tell you too, I like the fact that there were fewer people there and we didn't have little kids. Like that's a constant, anybody who's ever been in one of my tournaments knows it's like my personal pet peeve to have little kids running out on the court in between, timeouts and half times and everything. So, I mean, we hardly had a single kid in the building, and it just felt like a more kind of professional event, not having to chase kids off, and we didn't have basketballs bouncing everywhere. So that was an unintended positive side effect from my perspective. Facility owners, are not going to be thrilled with not having kids there because they're the ones that drive the concessions.
Right.
My guess is center court didn't have a banner day concession wise, but they had people in the building at least.
Yeah. And their concessions was open though, right?
It was, yeah.
Okay. We have this eye health. I'm not sure which one you brought, but we have an eye health temperature reader, and it is really quick. So I can push the button, turn it on, push it again, and it immediately gives you the temperature, 98.9. I should be okay.
You probably do have a fever then, because those things register low.
No, I said 0.9. Should be 0.6.
Our cutoff was 100, but most people had temperatures like in the 97s. My wife said, I think, like very few people were even 98.6. So it tends to run a little bit low from what we understand.
Scott, did you have anyone that you had to turn away because they had a higher temperature?
Not a single person, and nobody even really approached the threshold. So I do think if you see somebody that's over 100, I mean, it's definitely a red flag. I kind of like the idea of that screening happening outside the building too. I realize not every building has that luxury, but center court had a nice little kind of patio area, and people are accustomed to primarily using one entrance there. So there were some logistical challenges with crowd flow and everything, and you've got bands of times that are really busy, like the very first time slot of the day and probably your second time slot of the day. Those are all new teams, and those were crazy busy. And then and then things sort of smooth out. But yeah, so we didn't have to deal with turning anybody away. I don't think it would have been. I don't think anybody would have fought us on it or anything. And we didn't have to really worry about somebody trying to sneak in because we weren't charging anything. And next event, that might be a little bit more of a concern. I mean, we're only charging $5, so I have a hard time believing that people are going to go to great lengths. But once you start charging, then people kind of feel like, oh, I could, game the system a little bit. I'm not worried about the $5. What I'm worried about is if somebody games the system and avoids the temperature check. That has, that concerns me a lot more. So hopefully people will be smart and not do anything like that. So anyway, all things considered, I'm super pleased and hopeful that the next event will similarly go off without a hitch.
If you received a call that somebody from the tournament came down with symptoms and tested positive for COVID, do you feel confident or comfortable that you have all the information you need to let people know that situation with the information that you got from the waivers? Could you easily just copy emails and push that out and let them know? And would you do it?
We chose not to collect that information. How can I say this?
I think I know where you're going. Like, do you sound the alarm if there isn't an alarm?
No, that's another question. But
People?
I don't like, based on past experience, I don't like giving club directors contact information, and I'm just going to assume club directors don't like giving other clubs contact information. So I get nervous anytime you're doing anything where you're requesting phone numbers or emails from people that aren't associated with your club. So club directors are going to be the ones, we do have an attendance list, we have names, but if we got in a situation where we had to communicate to people, we would go back to a club director and say, we've got an issue. We have a list that all of these people attended our event. You need to communicate with them. And so it adds an extra layer, but that's how we chose to do it.
That's a good point. You don't have to necessarily communicate to everyone, but you can at least communicate to the directors, and then it would be in their hands and their responsibility to take it from there.
And we do at least have an accounting of names, and there's sort of a trail. Okay, like let's say Blaze, you brought Inferno, and we noted that 8 Inferno players checked in, and you've got a couple coaches, a score timer, and then maybe 1 or 2 fans for each player. That at least allows you to narrow it down, and we can give you a list. And I would think that you could quickly get a message out to everybody that was connected to your team if necessary.
Okay, cool. Yeah,
I mean, it's an unknown question, and I can appreciate the things you're going through and how you've handled it, but is the expectation really, like, if somebody,
I know,
let's say my entire impact organization we all played in center court on June 13th. So if some other club, or even somebody in our own club, anybody who's in that building, let's say that they notify us, hey, got a positive test, whether they're sick or not, got a positive test, just wanted to let you know, is the expectation that every single person that was in center court is quarantined for 10 days or 14 days? I mean, that's a genuine question.
No,
Didn't that happen to Blizzard? Because I think Blizzard had a thing like right when this first started in March. I remember him talking about that at one of our first meetings, that they had a tournament and someone had tested positive, and that was right away in March. And they had to go through and try to contact everyone. I just remember him talking about that at one of our first meetings.
So was that tournament in March, like before the shutdown then? Like kind of when the WIA was still doing stuff?
It was probably that maybe a week or so into March, I thought.
Okay.
Yeah, I just remember Rich talking about that.
Yeah, I don't remember hearing about that. That was a big question when we went through ours, when we had the basketball coach on one team and then the week after the two girls on another team test positive. Um, the we were like, oh, do we have to let every team that was in the building at that time know? And the answer is no. Uh, and and even though I coached that 12U team, I also coached the Inferno team. I didn't have to worry about telling the Inferno team to quarantine because the line that's drawn in the sand is it's the people they want to quarantine themselves are the ones that came into direct contact. Those who were direct contact are considered people who were within 6 feet for 15 minutes or more. So in that case, really, Scott, it would be okay if there's a girl on an impact team that tested positive. Um, maybe the people you do contact are the teams that one girl's team played against, because the likelihood of them having contact within 6 feet for 15 minutes or more is more likely to be the case. But all the outliers, everybody else would be a no.
I guess, I mean, and first
I'm
off,
not,
I don't want to,
and this I'm just guessing because I
yeah.
haven't been in this situation.
I mean, I don't want to have to deal with this situation, but is another fair way of looking at this. Um, it's unavoidable. Like, and when parents have signed off to allow their kids to play full contact basketball, they're essentially saying, look, I know my kid's going to be exposed to the virus.
Mm-hmm.
Either they're healthy enough, either we think they had it already, or they're healthy enough that if they get it, we'll be fine. We'll get it and put it behind us. I just don't think, for instance, that it. I'll put it this way: if I sent out a message to my parents and said, "Hey, we were, somebody on some team last weekend tested positive, and I just wanted to let you know, but we have practice tomorrow, and you just make your own decision about whether or not you think you need to quarantine." Everybody would be at practice. 100% of the people. Like because I feel like we've crossed this line where we're not going to stop.
Life.
We're not going to stop doing that because somebody in our orbit tested positive. Like the people who are participating are kind of playing by a different set of rules. And I don't mean that they're above the law or anything, but they're not. They haven't succumbed to the like, oh my God, I don't ever want to get exposed to the virus. It's like an acceptance that it's impossible to not get exposed.
Mm-hmm.
And if I'm going to get it, I'm going to get it. And then I am not at high risk if I do get it. So I don't know. I don't mean to sound flippant about it, but it's hard to marry those two concepts when you've decided to jump in, you're running practices and you're attending tournaments, and then to tell your families like, somebody that's 3 degrees of separation away from you tested positive, you need to quarantine for 14 days. Like that logically doesn't match up. I even went so far thinking about this on the waiver. I wanted to say, like, just so you know, like somebody in the building is going to have COVID. Like you're going to be, by coming to this event, you are exposing yourself to the virus. And if you think that you're not, I mean, then you better not come to this event. So I don't know how much more plainly we could state it, but I don't think anybody, my guess is I don't think anybody attending that event was under the impression that there was zero risk. So I'll just leave it at that.
Right. And I think the people who have family members who may be at higher risk, they are making personal decisions on whether or not they will attend or not attend based on their circumstances.
Absolutely. And I mean, I think there's a lot of personal freedom here. And I had some clubs tell me that things have softened up, but when we were doing the first event, I had some people tell me, we'd feel a lot better if parents weren't able to attend. I thought that was kind of an arbitrary, like, okay, so you're not worried about your kid getting it. And if you don't want to attend, like, you don't have to attend, right? You could just drop your kid off, but you're worried about other parents attending. The whole thing just struck me as kind of weird. And as a parent, I mean, I don't want to send my kid to an athletic competition without one of the parents there. Like, what if they sustain a concussion or break a leg or something like that? And as a club director, I'm not thrilled about running something with no parents around. I mean, we are doing that for practice, but for the most part, they're sitting out in the parking lot, and we've got 3 or 4 coaches in the building. But it would make me very nervous to run an entire tournament with 5 or even up to 8 courts, I guess, if up in Appleton, if you only had a handful of adults in the building. I mean, I think that brings on a whole different kind of liability and stress when you're running an event. So a lot of it is just the signals you send, I think, to make people feel like you're doing something, make them feel like it's not just the wild, wild west out there. And we try to strike a balance. Like we want to do some common sense things, but we also don't want to be uh, over the top and doing things that that serve no purpose other than to signal to everybody that I don't know, you take it seriously. But I recognize you got to do some of that.
Right. Right. And I think if you implement some processes to limit exposure, or to be smart and take this the next step forward, it's better than doing nothing. We have let our families know, and I continue to remind my kids, especially my older ones, I'm like, you guys know you're gonna get it, right? So take care of yourself. My biggest message is be healthy, eat well, take care of yourself, get your sleep, so that when you are exposed to it or you do get it, your body, like with everything, can fight it. So okay. I do have to say that on our 12U team, we had made a comment about everybody would still come back to practice. We had 14 girls on the team, which is why I'm trying to do that split of 2, and that's just not working out, Scott. But with people now getting sick or unable to make it or whatever. But so there was 2 families. So of the 12 that were left, there was 2 families who, before we told them to quarantine and everything, they're like, you know what? When they heard the girls had come down with symptoms, they're like, we're just going to keep our daughters out for this next practice just to see what happens. So the majority of the families, so 10 out of those 12 were like fine. 2 of them were like a little bit more cautious. It was also interesting because one of the gals, Thursday, June 4th, had softball practice after that last exposure to the gal who did come down with symptoms. She had this player D went to a softball practice after everything happened, ended up letting the softball coach know that what the situation was that she's in, and she's gonna isolate at home and everything. There was somebody she came in contact that was positive. That softball coach decided to cancel practice when he found that out, let the softball team know. A mom from that softball team, who is a nurse and has a husband who's a doctor, ends up calling our mom, the basketball girl, and said, I can't believe you let this happen. And you came to practice. And mind you, they did not know with the last time that they went to practice that she was going to get sick. This other gal was going to get sick. But she got flack from another parent, from a softball parent, that she let this happen. And that was interesting. So I don't know. I think there's just still people of interesting mindsets out there. So, okay. Moving forward. So, Kara, do you want to? I should say, does anybody have any points to make or anything, Corey, Bob, added about tournaments that you've been to or anything before we move on to Recruit Wisconsin? I have not heard anything on the guys' side. We're going to be starting tournaments this weekend for our boys. So, Kara, go ahead. You can give
Boys,
updates on. Oh, Ed is
yeah.
talking. Sorry. Yep.
For the boys, we've recently started just doing some like workout groups and agility and stuff like that. And then for the as far as the scheduling goes, we're gonna try to get some scrimmages going, and then we're maybe looking at possibly 3 events this summer. That is assuming if the August live period rumor is true, then we'll play that those 2 times in August and one other time, maybe Mississippi River Classic or something that a majority of the in-state boys teams are doing. We haven't really decided on what that was going to be yet.
What are the 3 events you're attending, Ed?
I was talking to a coach this morning, and he kind of insinuated that there will be possibly 2 weekends in August that are haven't been officially sanctioned, but they're hoping to have live periods during those 2 times. And I'm assuming that NY to LA will definitely do something if the NCAA is doing something. So I'm counting those 2 events and then one other event, along with a handful of scrimmages.
What are the 2 weekends in August that you're hearing might be live periods?
August 15th and 16th and Labor Day.
I think it gets voted on today.
Oh,
So should know, how that's going, moving forward. I know like that weekend on the girls' side is that's when they move the North Tartan Meltdown.
oh, really? Okay.
Mm-hmm. And then I think too, for the girls' side, maybe bringing back that weekend in September is also on the table.
Like that 19th, 20th time frame?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
But to talk a little bit about our Recruit Wisconsin tournament, Lisa has the registration is live now. And so that's on through Exposure Events. And what we're going to do is it is Lisa from the Blaze, us from Team Wisconsin, Legends, Todd from Legends, and then Mary from One on One Milwaukee are kind of coming together to put this together. And it'll be July 20th through 22nd. But it's broken up on the 20th on Monday. It's a 1-day tournament. So that's for your 8th grade team, so your 2024s, and then your second level 2023s, 9th grade. So that will be a 3-game guarantee. So pools of 4, round robin. And you'll get 3 games kind of in and out, won't be there. We have kind of different waves. So like there'll be one group, pretty much play, sit, play, sit, play. So that's Monday. And then your level 1 2023s, and then throughout your high school, all your level 1s and 2s will play on Tuesday and Wednesday. That'll be a 4-game guarantee. So 2 games Tuesday, 2 games Wednesday. Pools of 4, round robin in your pool, and then you'll cross over against another pool based on your finish. So if you're first in pool A, you play first in pool B. Second, play second. We're hoping they'll have 4 courts that will have live video. And we're hoping really to get one of the courts, kind of like our main court would have also, what's the word I'm looking for, Lisa? Like a commentating. Yeah, like a commentator for that. But one of the things that we're kind of thinking, and I thought this was great, I think Lisa and Mary came up with this, is, you have that thing now it's hard because figuring out how much to charge, and you're not going to probably get admissions or that whole process, because if you're running tournaments, admissions is paying for a bulk of your costs. One thing that they came up with, and I think this is a really good idea, is what we would do is, the tournament entry might be a little higher, but then we would give, let's say, if you get 2 people per player and then plus an extra one. So maybe you get 21, wristbands or something like that for your team. Those would go to the coach or the director, and then the director or coach would have the parents pay them. So then that could go back right to the, to the club. So even though it maybe is, let's say $425 to enter the tournament, you might get 200 or something back. So it could kind of weigh down, help then cover those costs.
What do you guys think about that? Because I know it's it would be one more thing for you to have to think about, and I know we hate paperwork and more work. But do you think that is just something good, just a a different way to give back to the clubs, or something that we should do or could do that would make an impact?
I mean, I can't speak for everybody, but I get why you would do it that way, and it is very creative. In a sense, it kind of makes the parents pay for it twice, though, and so it's it's very beneficial to the directors and the clubs because it's an opportunity to kind of recoup some of your expenses that you otherwise wouldn't have. But by and large, I'm guessing the way most clubs run, it's the parents that are footing the bill via fees for tournament entry fees. And then now if you come back to the parents and ask them for the admission, um, it's,
Well, we would have them pay admission at the door, or they would pay admission to you.
they would, but if they paid admission at the door, the entry fee into the tournament would be lower.
And probably not ton. I mean, because it wouldn't go down by like, I wouldn't think the entry fee for the tournament would go down by that much. But right now, because of you just don't know, you can't. And like you said, your first tournament you lost on because
Yeah.
of those, So it almost kind of gives you that buffer. And then, I mean, if you're a director, if you don't want to charge the parents, you can just give them the wristbands.
Well,
So really,
that-
it could be up to
Just so I'm understanding this right, so you're really just looking at this as a way to allow the clubs to recoup some money and maybe kind of use this not really as a fundraiser, but I like the idea of giving it to the club directors and having them disperse it. I think one, that makes it easier on you guys to not have to worry about tracking who's in and out of the building. If every team gets, again, whatever it is, allotted on the number of players you have, so they get 22 wristbands, then, that's how it's figured out. So it's a lot easier for you guys. I know from my side of things, kind of like Scott was saying, I would probably not charge just because we're going to be doing the 2 days. So I know, a lot of ours are from, southern Wisconsin. So it'll probably be a hotel stay as well. So I get where you're coming from. But again, I don't think we would probably charge for it, just because, again, it would be just another added charge to the families. So.
Do you think too, I mean, just thinking that scenario through, like let's say RAP didn't charge and we didn't charge, are your parents going to be mad at you if you do charge? I mean, parents talk at these things, and I mean, I don't want to put other people in a bad position, but I'm also just I'm not really thrilled about trying to get.
I don't think we had that conversation where we thought people wouldn't charge for the tickets. So we'd have to think about that one, that some people would charge and some people wouldn't. And how would that come across because parents talk, they find out. Mary, maybe we just keep it all at the door and charge.
I don't think anybody would begrudge you. I mean, I understand the logistical challenges, but I don't think anybody would begrudge you charging at the door. But I think what goes hand in hand with that is, I don't know. I mean, it's the combination of a higher than normal entry fee and asking the club directors to go back and sell the tickets. I mean, that to me is like a little bit of a disconnect where if you charge at the door, then you probably are talking about at least a modestly lower entry fee.
Yeah, I know Cara had said a little higher fee. I think because we're not doing the additional games, like, okay, let's say we guarantee 3, but you might get 4. So when I looked at it, I know our Hardwood Hustle, we charge $275 for early bird, $325 for 4 guaranteed games. And this one, they get 3 guaranteed games for $325, $450 for 4. We are doing the additional, like paying people to make sure the games are recorded, do the live streaming, bring somebody in and announcing. So we're doing additional things that are more costly, which makes sense to raise it, that fee a little more. And typically we would charge at the door, and with the Champion Center, I know, well, actually this is their first year we'd be at the Champion Center, but in Appleton last year, what Blaze did for running tournaments, we ended up charging $10 a day pretty much, and then a weekend pass. We had a Friday through Sunday tournament, so a weekend pass, we gave them a break, and instead of $30, it was 25, I believe. For a 2-day, instead of 20, it was 15. Pretty much on Sunday, if people came in and they're only there for a game, we're just like, give us $5 or just go in, as it got later in the day. So we were expecting that if we were going to charge at the door, we were going to say it's $10 a day or 20 for the weekend. And we just put that number on there so that it would give, if directors were going to sell the tickets, it would give you guys some guidance as to, well, how much should I charge people or not? What would you suggest? But I see.
Well, I mean, and yeah, I mean, based on that guideline, you could definitely cover the entire cost of the event. Look, every club's free to do whatever they want to do, and we're going to support the event no matter what you do. I'm just trying to think through some of the negative ramifications that some of you might experience if, if let's say you go ahead and charge 20, like let's say you let 2 fans in per player and you have a roster of 10, so that's 20 fans, and let's say you decide to charge them $20, so you got $400. That almost covers the cost of your team. And then the parents sit in the stands and say, like, well, wait, we're getting charged. Like, eventually they're going to pay for the tournament via the fees that you've already assessed or you will assess. And then I don't know. I just think there could be some ill will there.
You're saying the parents are going to connect it to, now the director's getting that money back, so we're paying twice for that tournament, rather than, okay, we're paying the director to be part of the team. They have to pay for the registration. The door fee now goes to another set of hands.
Yeah, I mean, if you really think it through, what's happening is you're transferring money from the parents' pockets into the director's pockets.
Yeah, rather than the tournament director's pockets.
Yes, and maybe you view this thing as sort of a co-op, like all of the clubs that are participating are sort of equally sharing. But if you're going to do that, then I'd almost go back to charge at the door and spread the profits. Like, people running it should get a bigger share, but it kind of feels like you're trying to set up a co-op, but then each club is sort of at their own discretion for, are you going to charge, how much you're going to charge, how are you going to handle that? And then I don't know. I just,
yeah.
People complain about anything and everything, even when it's not legitimate. This could actually be sort of a legitimate gripe that some people could come up with.
Right. And even if we say you have to sell these tickets at this amount, that doesn't mean everybody will. They may be like, well, I just don't want to sell or make my parents pay, which creates a problem that's out of our hands.
And look, if we do that, I'll just tell you what we'll do. If we have to sell them, that's fine. But when I calculate what we're going to give for people as a partial refund at the end of the year, I will basically treat this as a free tournament. If I made enough money to cover the entry fee, I'm not going to tell my parents at the end of the year then that, oh, you all have to pay $50 for the Recruit Wisconsin tournament, because I didn't spend $50. I mean, I didn't spend $50 on behalf of each player. I collected 40 from the parents, let's say. So that's just how but I'm coming from a different place. I don't run a facility. This is not a source of income for me, but just be aware that everybody's got different financial objectives. You've got some clubs that do it for profit, albeit probably not very much, but you've got other clubs that operate at cost, and you've got some people that I think are just doing it almost out of the goodness of their heart, especially if you've got like a mom and pop type team. They might be fronting the bill for a lot of different things. So when you start injecting these financial things, I just think you create some imbalances and some potential for hard feelings within certain clubs.
Yeah. No, point definitely taken. So we'll talk about that, Cara. Okay. No, I'm glad you came up with that perspective and what could happen. That's good. That's why we wanted to share. Cara, was there anything else on the list that you wanted to let people know about?
I think so. I mean, I think right now it's just, and you're working to, like you mentioned, with sports recruits. So when they do register, they're going to have to do like the different, with each of their athletes. So then it'll get tied in with that sports recruits.
Yes. So just to respond to Scott, I completely agree with, you mentioned you get a little concerned when directors ask for, email and phone number from all those families. I've been burned before from other directors, and I typically don't ask that. In this case, with Recruit Wisconsin and Hardwood Hustle, and it's more for the 8th graders and up. Even though with the system we have to ask everybody for it. Just so you know, we are not sharing that information. We're not calling families to try and woo them away to go from one club to another. That information all is because of sports recruits. So sports recruits, I did have a conversation with them yesterday to finalize plans. They are in, both for Hardwood Hustle and also Recruit Wisconsin. They are providing sports recruits platform for all of the athletes, 8th grade and older, who are participating in these events. And with that, I don't know if you guys have seen with sports recruits, but it's a recruiting platform. It allows the athletes to create their profile, search for schools that they're interested in, make connections with college coaches. You as a director can see that information, oversee your athletes. If you want, you can have your own process or not in handling that. But basically what it allows us to do with the tournament is, so the athlete, everybody has like their personal benefit from it, but it also gives us an event app that we can have so that when we are running the tournament, if you click on the event, you'll see the roster of the teams. When the college coaches come in on the back end, from their viewpoint, they'll be able to see all the rosters or the athletes for each team for that event, for that game. They can click on an athlete's profile. They can get information about the athlete. They can take notes. They can rank them. They can follow them. So as they're watching the game, they can also see if that athlete favorited their school, to know if that athlete has interest in their university. So it's a technology that allows the college coaches to connect with athletes just a little bit more in a process and formula that can continue on past that event. And it's free. There's no fee for the athletes to update their profiles. Sports recruits, even right now, athletes can have a free profile. And of course, where they make their money is later on, if they want to get more features with that profile, there's different packages. Or what we do is we pay on our end as a club to provide that platform for our athletes. And we have a different program that we use personally and how we handle it to just give, to do more work for them, to help them connect with the right schools academically and athletically. That profile, that free profile, will continue. I want to say they said this has got a little gray and I have to go back to them. I know that they said that profile will continue for like a month after the event. So I'm thinking it's more the event, getting into the event and seeing it that way. But their profile that you can just reach on Sports Recruits, if you're a member of Sports Recruits as a college coach, or as the club director, that should still stay intact for you to access moving forward past the event. I'm not showing you pictures or anything because I know it would take time, but basically that will be happening. With that, on the college coach end, they're working on technology. They're making improvements and adding some features, and we're hoping it'll be live by the end of July. It just may not. But when you click on the event, let's say I'm a college coach, and you see the rosters, there will be an opportunity once they get this technology set up in full where They can also watch that game live if you're live streaming it at your event. So it's all right there in one app for them to watch. So, and to get the information they want. So that's all a go with sports recruits. And pretty much the reason why when you register your athletes, I ask for like height, position, email, phone number, is so that sports recruits can dump that into their platform for the event, so that when college coaches are watching the games, they can see all that info. And when the athletes update their profile, in addition, so I'm not sure how we'll do it with the club directors. I know that the team name, so like let's say Wisconsin Impact or Team Wisconsin, will show on that athlete's profile. We're not giving them your director's cell phone number or anything like that, but I can talk to my contact and sports recruits. But pretty much if somebody goes to, like, let's say the Blaze page right now for sports recruits, they'll see, because we have it set up for our staff, who their head coach is, who their assistant coach is, who the director is. So, you know, they're not reaching out to sports recruits. They're not reaching out to Blaze. They're reaching out to your club and your coaches the way you want those college coaches to do so. So it's all for you guys to help with that end of things. And if you don't want to do more with it, you don't have to after the event. So that information will be kept confidential, given to sports recruits, and we will put it away on our back end. And that's why I'm happy too that we only have, actually, Cara and I are the only ones right now who have access to the athletes' information on the back end in basketball exposure. Mary isn't in it, and Todd's not in it either. So we want you guys to be able to trust us. So any questions on Recruit Wisconsin or any suggestions? Awesome. Cool.
And we're going to start opening it up to outside Wisconsin, correct?
Yeah. Yeah, Cara, if you can, think you and Mary, we're going to push that out to Minnesota.
Yep.
Yeah. So biggest suggestion is please go online and register your teams. It's all set up. If you have any questions, let me know. If you need any help, I'm there to help on that tech end of things. If you have any suggestions, first time you go in, we already have 2 teams registered. I got to dump our kids in. So we're registering just like everybody else. Even though we have access to the back end, we're going to be registering like everybody else and paying the same fee. So yeah. All right. Cool. I like our small team here. So next week, I think we'll probably skip this next week and go from there. We'll have one the following week as we get into things, just to see how people are doing. But I know that our numbers are dwindling, which is probably a good sign that people are moving forward and getting practices in and getting busy. So awesome. Well, with that, if you guys don't have anything more, I wish you luck. And we'll see you again.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yep. Thanks, Ed. Bye, guys. Bye, Corey. Bye, Bob. Bye, Scott. Bye, Cara.
All right, thanks again for doing everything here.
Yep. No problem.